folks, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Natasha and I do book things here. Today's video is going to be my September wrap-up, all the books that I read in the month of September, my stats and everything like that. I will mention that the majority of these, I think a good half of them, I've actually talked about before in my Contemporary-a-thon wrap-up. I did end up reading 10 books in September. Definitely a little bit less than what I anticipated, but I did deal with a power outage for a while and then didn't read as a result of that, basically. I did also like work full-time and whatever. Anyway, so for a couple of these books I am going to refer to my Contemporary-a-thon wrap-up, where I basically summarize all the books that I read for the Contemporary-a-thon, and then if you really wanted my like day-to-day opinions, you could go back and watch the vlogs from Contemporary-a-thon. I'm gonna give you guys my stat breakdown. So in total, like I said, I read 10 books. That was 3,609 pages. And that equals out to about 120 pages a day. Definitely less than normal for me because of life. My star ratings though were insane this month. So I had no 1 or 2 star books. I only had 1 3-star book, 5 4 stars, and 4 5 stars. Overall, the month rating as a whole was 4.3 stars, which is high. That's very high. Pretty much loved everything I read this month. Nothing was shit, which is great. So of my genres, I always try to mix it up a little bit. This month I read a horror, a magical realism, sci-fi, contemporary short story collection that had some contemporary, another contemporary, a mystery contemporary, a horror contemporary, and a historical contemporary. Basically, like, those last ones were like contemporary short stories, contemporary mystery, horror, and historical. So a lot of those fall in the contemporary genre, but there's like that main sort of overlying genre. I read 4 adult books and 6 YA, and my years were 1980, 1981, 2018, 17, 3 2018s, another 1981, and another 2018. So I ended up reading 5 2018 releases, and then my older books were my older Stephen King. So found that kind of interesting. Just because one of those is a short story collection and I didn't check, I think it's all female, but for my male and female, I just put 4 male, 7 female, because I'm not too sure how people refer to themselves as. So I'm going to get into my lowest to my highest, but really the lowest was 1 3-star. So it's a pretty dang positive month, okay? Okay. Hoping to carry on to that like positivity into October, which should be great. The lowest rated book this month is actually one of my Stephen Kings. That's the book that I rated a 3-star. It is in the Bachman books that I have here, and that one is Roadwork. So Roadwork is interesting. It's not really a horror. It's not really much of anything, which is why I kind of gave it a 3. I like Stephen King's character building and I like his world building, but this one didn't do much for me. So Roadwork itself is basically about a guy who works in a factory and lives in his house with his wife and whatever, and his son had passed away from a brain tumor, and he basically is in charge of finding a new house and a new location for work because an overpass is getting built through his house and through the factory and where he works. And so he's getting like more and more increasingly pissed off about that, and it kind of just follows him dealing with that, dealing with grief and his son's death, and sort of what it means to have this road being built through his house. It definitely pumps up and pumps up and pumps up. This is actually a Stephen King ending that I didn't mind. I thought it was interesting enough, but it was just kind of flat. There wasn't really any horror. There wasn't, it was just more boring, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I like his world building and I like his character building, and to be honest, it really reminded me almost of an episode of Breaking Bad in a way. I feel like it's just had that sort of thing that the character had to sort of find within themselves, like an episode of Breaking Bad would. But overall, not really scary. it's pretty dull, actually, is kind of like the best way I can describe it. And overall, the last like page of the ending of the book is what made it a 3. Otherwise, I was just gonna give it a like solid 2 because I was just reading just for the sake of reading. So if you're curious of a Stephen King work that has really no horror in it, like whatsoever, Roadwork would do it, but just know it's not his most exciting work. Alright, and then moving on to 4-star books, the next one is another Stephen King that I read. This is Firestarter, and this one was really good, but not quite, I don't know, in hindsight, like, there's a lot of things I liked about this, and it's hard, because it's not really a 4, but it's not quite a 5, like, I didn't like it as much as I liked other Stephen King's. I find when I rate his work, I rate it against other works that I've read by him, so really more of a 4.5. There's just something about this that I didn't like to push it to a 5. I don't know. This follows the story of Andy and his daughter Charlie, and honestly this Stephen King is probably one of my favorite like setups and like what happens, because it reminded me very much of Stranger Things, just and the whole like MK Ultra thing. Okay, so anyway, it follows Andy and Charlie, and it sets them up where you know that Charlie, the little girl, has some sort of like pyrokinetic abilities. She's basically able to move things, but as a result of that, she makes fire. Firestarter. But you come to find out as the story progresses that her abilities are in part due to a test that both Andy and his wife were put under, like a medical test, very like MK Ultra-esque, which I'm into, very into this. This book read, like, it's a chunky book, and I read this in fucking no time, because it was just interesting and gripping. There are some little horror elements in terms of like sort of what happens as a result of the test. It's just a beautiful like look at like a father's love and like a father-daughter relationship and the love there, and also just this like creeping in force of the government trying to find them and whatever. It was just really lovely. The ending for this was pretty good. Like, I did like this. This is again not one that has an upsetting Stephen King ending, so that's nice. I really honestly suggest this one to everyone. This is a solid King, and I really liked it. If you're into that sort of like Stranger Things vibe, if you're into like reading kids with like, you know, abilities and whatnot, this is a good one. Julie could read this, no problem. So it just for some reason was missing something in there for me, and I don't remember what, and I don't remember why I gave it a 4. It's really more of a 4.5. It's fun. It's a really good Stephen King though, so I like that a lot. So the next 3 books are ones that I covered in my contemporary-a-thon wrap-up, so I'm not going to go too much into them, really talk much about them at all. I read Jung Jae Myung. This follows basically a young woman and an older governor, and sort of the story that follows from that, how she gets like shamed basically. And I thought it was okay, and I just wanted a little bit more from it. The way in which this was told was really interesting. I gave it a 4. Up next was a short story collection that I kind of pretended was contemporary. It's really not. The majority of it isn't not contemporary at all. It's Toil and Trouble, 15 Tales of Women in Witchcraft. This happens to be the Spookathon group read, which is kind of sad because I would have read it for that had I known, but I went ahead and read it when I got it and really liked some of these stories, and some of them were really good, some better than others, which is going to happen all the time with short story collections, but I liked it as a whole enough to give it a 4. So if you like witches and you like that kind of vibes, do suggest. Next for Contemporary-a-thon, I read another Stephen King. I read 3 this month. I know. I read Cujo, and Cujo was just pretty good. Like, it was pretty okay. I talked about it like much more in depth, but I was kind of leveling at a 3 because, again, like Roadwork, it was fairly slow to begin and I was kind of bored, but then about the last, I'd say maybe the last 1/3 of the book was fantastic. It really gave you that kind of like impending doomy kind of feeling like most Stephen Kings have. This follows Cujo, who is a rabid Saint Bernard. You get a little bit of the dog's perspective. A lot of comments I'm seeing is like, oh, I don't want to be sad by being in the mind of Cujo. It is a little sad, but as you get towards the end of the book, you realize that he is just totally is rabies basically, so you kind of lose your feelings for him. But if you have a Saint Bernard, or if you don't like dogs with rabies, probably don't read that one, but I liked it, so I gave it a 4. And then the last 4-star book that I have here was a slight teensy bit disappointment. Also, I didn't realize that this author was a Canadian author until I like entered it into my spreadsheet today. But that's Sadie by Courtney Summers. I did not realize that she was Canadian, so yay. That's kind of awesome because this book is making its rounds, and I just like supporting Canadian authors because fuck yeah, Canada. This book is a YA mystery contemporary kind of book. Follows 2 narratives, one being Sadie, who is going on this mission to find out or seek revenge for the killer of her sister. Then it also follows a guy who's doing a podcast who is trying to figure out where Sadie has gone. And the timeline between her and the podcast, excellent. Really, really liked it. But this was, to me, just too predictable based on the amount of like mystery and stuff that I've read personally. And so I saw the ending coming. While I liked it and I enjoyed it, it's not one that left me very satisfied because I saw it coming. Also, this is kind of an open-ended ending, which I do enjoy, but for this novel, does it work? Yeah, kind of, but it doesn't mean that I liked it. So instead of a 5, which I can definitely understand why people are rating it, that I ended up just giving it a 4. If you are not one that's very into reading like graphic mysteries and like adult mysteries, this would be a good start for you, because it's a little bit dulled down for the YA genre. So gave that a 4. And then lastly, we're going to get into my 5-star books, which are 3 that I haven't talked about this month, so yay. The first one, which for some reason I've been like anticipating talking about forever, and I thought that I had talked about it before. Turns out I hadn't. Basically I thought I read it like months ago and I didn't. Anyway, I read at the beginning of September Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno. Fuck, this book is so good. Chelsea has been forcing people to read this book, and for good reason. This is probably one of my favorite books of the year, and I fucking love this. Yeah, this is basically what I wanted The Wicked Deep to be in order to be a 5-star book. And in hindsight, I kind of want to read this and then read The Wicked Deep like back to back, and compare, because they both have very similar feelings. This follows a family of modern day witches. They live on this really atmospheric little island, and it's just I don't even know how to describe it. It's so good. It's that like contemporary magical realism thing. Yeah, basically I loved everything about this. It's so like perfectly witchy, whimsical, sweet but dark. Read this. A little nugget that everyone should just enjoy. I love this book. I want to reread this. Another 5-star book that I loved, that again I think was suggested by Chelsea. That is The Loneliest Girl in the Universe by Lauren James. This is a sci-fi young adult, which I like sci-fi, but I typically am a little bit too chicken shit to get into adult sci-fi. Just because I'm not looking for something that's too science-based. But this is a sci-fi all about a girl who, for various reasons, ends up alone on a spaceship, headed towards cultivating another place, and she ends up receiving messages both from Earth and from another craft, and what happens there? There's definitely parts in this that I felt a little uneasy. I was like, ooh, that kind of spooky. Overall, the way that this wrapped up, I loved it. I was enthralled by like every page of this. I read it super quick. It's not the longest book, 300 pages or so, and it reads really quickly, but it was gripping and I fucking liked it. So there's that. This is my sci-fi pick of the year. Wow, I have nowhere to put any books. It's gonna go right there. And then the last two 5-star books are both ARCs that I received from HarperCollins Teen, HCC Frenzy, so thank you to them. I went to an event and got some books you guys saw, but anyway. So the first one is one coming out this month, if it's not out already by the time I release this. Maybe. It's going to come out very soon. That is A Large Expanse of Sea by Tahar Mafi. This book is so fucking good. Oh my god. Okay, so I cried like the first like 11 pages, I think is what I said, and like the first chapter made me cry. This follows a teenage girl post 9/11, like a year post 9/11, what that means for her, and it's hard to read. Like it's hard to read because I know that stuff like this happened and it still happens, and it's just like it's just heavy. There is a love story in this as well, but like I said in my other wrap-up, it really doesn't take focus for me, just more about what other things that she's dealing with. Yeah, this is wonderful, and when it comes out, I think you guys should all run to get it. If you like a more diverse read or a more darker YA contemporary, then pick this one up. It's great. And then the last book of the month was just wonderful, and I made sure to try to like finish it right before the month so I could include it in this month. It's another ARC, and this one is coming out on November 13th, and that is Pulp by Robin Talley, and this is actually categorized as a historical YA contemporary book or something. Listen, it's a little bit of a lot of things. This is a wonderful book that follows two narratives. One is a teenage girl who is a lesbian set in modern day, and she is learning more about lesbian pulp fiction, the books that were made and written in like the early 50s, 60s, I believe. And then the other narrative is one of the authors that she's following. A lot of this is based on history and actual books that were written and made, and just the sort of secrecy that was behind that, and something that I knew nothing about. I'll be totally honest with you guys, I knew nothing about lesbian pulp fiction. However, this book had made me like stop and Google stuff and like deep dive into these, like, one, amazing covers, two, sort of like what it was and what it meant to be an author of that kind of work at that time. Yeah, it's wonderful, and the characters are great, and everything's great. It's just fucking great. It's great. It's really great, okay? Really suggest that you guys should go read this and pick it up the second it comes out. If you guys are if any of you guys are interested in that subject, definitely pick it up. If you're looking for a book that has like lesbian representation in it, pick this up because it's great. Gave me a little bit of like insight into something that I'm not familiar with, which was really sort of the things that happened in the early 50s, 60s with that whole culture. It was really eye-opening and wonderful, so I loved this and I do suggest it. So then that wraps up all the books that I read in the month of September. Do let me know what books were your favorite down below. Have you read any of these ones? Are you excited about any of these ones? Let me know. I'll be sure to read the comments and try to respond when I can. But yeah, so hopefully you guys like this month. I'm pretty pumped about October. I'm already like 3 days in, I've read 3 things, so I'm very into October. I do hope you guys are doing good, and until my next video, I'll talk to all of you soon. Bye.